Hello and welcome to Game Changer. I'm Maryam Zia. As Iran and Israel are exchanging deadly attacks on each other, the world is watching not only for the impacts on human lives, but also on the global economy. Iran holds the world's second largest gas reserves and third largest oil reserves. Israel's sudden attacks on Iran's key oil refineries and the South Pars gas field have already sent shockwaves across the globe, and oil prices have jumped up to 13%, and investors are now rushing towards the safe havens. The risk of a blockade of Strait of Hormuz, the world's most important oil route that carries around 20% of the global oil, is also increasing. If this narrow waterway is closed, it could lead to fuel shortages, global inflation, and severe economic crisis and energy crisis across the world. For a country like Pakistan, what are going to be its implications, we'll be discussing in today's program. And if this war prolongs, what are going to be implications and impacts on global economies, on inflation, and of course the future of the region and beyond. To discuss this and more, we are joined in the studios by Mr. Humayun Shami, who is President Pakistan Economic Forum and of course economic analyst. Welcome to the program. We are also joined by Major General retired Zahid Mehmood, who is defense analyst. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
We are joined online by senior political economist Dr. Hassan Zafar. Welcome to the program. And we are also joined by head of Iran programs IRS, Mr. Faraz Naqvi. Welcome to the program. Mr. Humayun, let me start with you. Of course, when we look at this recent crisis, how do you assess the risk of continued volatility in oil markets if this conflict escalates further?
Thank you very much. There are many aspects of this, because not only oil, rather our other imports, exports can also hit by this thing, And now we have seen that before the war, the oil price was around 65 to $66, and now it went up to even $78. But now it has eased down to about $73, $74 again, because as we have seen that Israel has not attacked particularly the oil sites of Iran, so still that is intact. But obviously, supply chain is broken. So Iran oil is not being exported at the moment, and then we have as you have discussed about the Gulf of Hormuz, from where the almost 20-25% of the world oil crosses. If that route is stopped, then that oil has to be rerouted, and that will be a very long route. So it will definitely increase the cost of the transportation. Already it has increased the transportation costs in terms of the risk, and the insurance charges have gone up. So definitely we are paying that. Importers will pay that, So, and same way in the export sector, So these are things.
Right, we'll be delving into depth of these aspects. But General Zahid, when we look at the history and when we look at the critical point of Strait of Hormuz, during Iran-Iraq war from 1980 to 1988, it was never closed, and despite attacks on vessels. Based on this historical precedent, how likely is the complete disruptions now, and how could this be different from the past, and how Iran itself is going to be impacted if there is a blockade?
Thank you very much, Maryam, for the invite, and it's a pleasure amongst such an elite panel. I think over a period of time, this warfare has, especially the one who are executing this war, the dynamics of this leadership. I don't call them leadership nowadays. In fact, these political thugs and some few terrorist leaders, not leaders, terrorists are waging the war. So the concept of war has changed a lot. So factor of unpredictability in the war has come up in a big way. So many things which have never happened even in the worst of the worst conflicts in the past. We have just seen in Indo-Pakistan context the held in abeyance kind of a stuff around about this Indus Water Treaty. This has never happened. We have had 4 wars with India. So this is a Modi thinking, and prosecution of war by a terrorist, by a fundamentalist, radical leader. So same mind is there. Now I'm not saying that this will be done by Iran and why Iran will, but if you will take the war to these scenarios or to these limits, then responses will always come in different domains. And as far as Iran is concerned, I think oil is the only weapon which they have, which they can use, or for the economy, it is the only, most critical element to wage the war, because they have been under sanctions for over a long period now. So this was the only leverage they have. Then the leverage which they enjoy with Russia and all that, that is also, surrounded by the economy which is related to the oil. So, and secondly, it will impact, it will pinch more to the international community, especially the Arab countries, whom Iran must be thinking that they are not playing the positive role to eliminate whatever is happening, or to help in, to create a stability in the region. So they are taking them and they are considering them as part of the problem, not as part of the solution. So to intimidate them also, to coerce them also, or to create an environment where they create a cost for them also. So this can very much happen. And I want to say that Iranians are not an ordinary nation. This is not an ordinary country. Even if they have to go down, God forbid, if they have to go down, they will go down fighting, and they will not leave any stone unturned. They will go to in all the fields of waging this war, and that's why I say that this can happen. So one has to be very, very careful and critical.
Right. Let me bring in Dr. Hassan's viewpoint into the discussion. Dr. Hassan, I want your take on the immediate economic effects and energy security. We know that of course, crude prices jumping by nearly 7%, and Iran's South Pars gas field, a critical asset for both domestic and export energy supply, was also set ablaze following Israel's attack. What long-term damage could this do to Iran's own fossil fuel structure, as well as how might it disrupt global natural gas flows, especially to Asia and Europe?
The flow of gas and oil will be seriously disrupted, especially for 2 reasons. If Iran threatened to block the Strait of Hormuz, that can disrupt at least 20% of world oil and gas supply, which is coming from the Gulf. And from Iran itself, which is supplying 30% of world oil and gas, if that is affected, so it will have very serious repercussions. I have done some calculation. Only Russia will be the country that benefits from this disruption, because the oil prices go up and the Russian oil price benefits from that. But other countries, including India, United States, and other European countries which are relying on the oil supply from the Gulf, when the oil prices go up, their economies will be seriously affected. So this is a very simple, straightforward calculation. But can this happen when we say long term? What do we mean by long term? Let's say if the war lasts for a month, what can that do to the world oil supply, and how long can they sustain? There are domestic problems in the United States, as we know. So President Trump's own position in domestic politics, and if the oil prices are pushed up, and there are very serious anti-war voices in the United States at the moment. So this can all culminate into a very serious crisis, not only for Iran, because Iran economy is already under stress because of the decades-old sanctions. So, but for Iran, it's different, because for Iran, it's an existential issue. their security is affected. They are seriously uh, uh, feeling the existential threat as far as the nuclear program is concerned. So they cannot let it go. They will have to fight it to the end. And let's also remember, when we talk about the long term and the possibility of bringing this war to an end, Iran was already at the negotiating table. So, and if we believe Netanyahu saying that we informed the Americans before the attack, so if the Americans were in possession of the imminent Israeli attack on Iran, and they were still sitting at the negotiating table, why didn't they let the Iranians know that the attack was coming? So that means Americans cannot be trusted by Iran anymore. Why, with what belief and with what confidence they will come back to the negotiating table, that remains to be seen. Because
Right, that remains to
they
be
must be
seen.
feeling betrayed. They must be feeling betrayed once, because it appears to be as the uh, uh, Trump administration treated them by alluring them into a talk and then allowing the Israelis to attack them. So the war does not seem to be ending anytime soon, as per these calculations. And the
Right.
effects, the economic effects, will certainly mount very profoundly as the war goes forward.
Right, and this is just the beginning. Faraz, coming to you, like other participants also alluded to the significance of Strait of Hormuz, which is responsible for around 21 million barrels of oil transit daily, roughly one third of the world's seaborne oil. How credible is the threat of Iran closing this choke point? And what could be the global and regional repercussions if Iran does so and move forward with this?
Thank you so much for having me. Well, the threat is very credible, because if we look into the history back in 2020, after the assassination of Qasem Soleimani by the US drone strikes, we have seen that the tanker warfare started in the Persian Gulf, in the Strait of Hormuz, and in the Red Sea, and that led to the global disruptions of energy supplies. And because of this reason, the US had to rush there to support its allies and to ensure the continuity of energy supplies. So this time, that was just only a one incident, but this time it is an all out war. It is a major conflict. But it can only be done if the US would directly intervene and support Israel directly, and assist Israel in attacking the Iranian energy fields. We have seen so far that Israel had conducted a strike on the South Paras gas field, and it is quite important because that South Par is not the Iranian energy field alone, but it is a shared venture
With Qatar,
with
yeah.
the Qatar. So that is why we have seen that it is not only a threat to the Iranian energies, but the overall energy supplies of the Middle East. And in response, Iran targeted the energy infrastructure of Israel in Haifa and in Tel Aviv. So I think that not only it would be catastrophic for the Middle Eastern nations, but also for the Israel and those countries who get their energy from Israel. So I think that it is a major threat imposed by the Israeli aggression onto Iran. But we have to understand that closing the Strait of Hormuz is not the first priority, it's not the first option. It is the last option. It could be leveraged as a last resort only when Iran would find that it is unable to counter the or it is unable to rain down the Israeli attacks, or the US has been unwilling or unsuccessful in convincing Israel to agree to a ceasefire. So I think that if this war would intensify in the coming days, then I think there is a possibility that the Strait of Hormuz would close. Otherwise, we might see some sort of disruptions, but I don't think that those disruptions could lead to the all-out closure.
Right, right. Mr. Shami, when we look at regional economic consequences, what's your take on the Middle Eastern markets and how the economy is reacting to it with the Tel Aviv stock exchange going down by 1.5%? What does this indicate about investor confidence in the region's economic stability?
I think worldwide, particularly Asian markets have gone down. Pakistani market has gone down. Indian market has gone down. India is also importing about 85% of is oil. You know, Pakistan importing almost 80%, more than 80% oil. LNG we are depending on that. So I think then there is definitely FDI will, you know, the FDI will not come to those areas where there are found some risks. So this all area, including Pakistan now, because we are neighboring country to Iran, so that has come to the risk side, you know. So definitely FDI will not come. Local investor also will be a little hesitant to invest further. So this is all happen. Then I have told you that the insurance charges are going up. So about 80-90% of our trade, foreign trade, is through sea line. So their insurance charges are going up. So this will affect our overall, overall position of trade, and it will, increase the cost of our import. And then, you know, obviously our balance of payment can affect from this, because once the oil prices go up, particularly if it increases more than $75 a barrel, you know, that definitely hit our balance of payment issue. So which was eased in the last budget. We have seen a surplus of almost 1 billion.
Right.
So
countries like Pakistan, which are heavily dependent on imported energy resources, are going to be impacted by this.
Very much.
But General Zahid, what impact would a prolonged conflict that of course all the other participants are also predicting in Gulf oil flows have on regional oil exporting countries and economies like Saudi Arabia and UAE, especially if global buyers start to look elsewhere for their needs?
To be very honest, it will be very difficult for me to comment on this, but primarily the whole world will be impacted, you know, because there will be a friction. I am sure that the economists, they will be able to comment much better, but there will be a lot of fluctuation in the prices. People will, those countries who will be exporting, they'll also raise the prices. So probably they'll be linked with this. If the demand is more, and I mean there'll be then difference between the demand and the supplies, and then there is the regional. United States is the country which will impact whatever is happening in this part of the world. This will impact the market, oil market also. You see, then they will also try to create an environment to put pressure on those countries who will try to take advantage of this, this situation. So I think overall it will be catastrophic for the entire world as far as the economy is concerned. And now at the moment, as we have seen that even President Trump is using the trade as the main lead instrument. Even in the war policy, they are using the trade and economy as the lead instrument. So of course they will have their protective maneuvers, or they will have their application around this oil also. And I'm sure that United States is not that. Why I'm talking again and again about the United States, because they have the switch of this war. They can even either switch off this war, or they can continue with this longevity, or the prolonged or a protracted application of war is totally in the hands of none other than United States of America. Let there be no doubt. So they will also see that what impact it will have on the American economy, what impact it will have on the other world powers or the world international economy, and how that impact is going to impact United States of America.
Of course,
so they will carry out their own cost benefit analysis, and that will, of course we all will
remains a key question.
But more important, if I may say, the last thing is more important is the struggling economies like Pakistan. We don't have the economic spaces. So that's why it is extremely dangerous for us.
Right. And Dr. Hassan, like General Zahid alluded to the longevity of war, and we have also already witnessed that in the first trading session after the strikes, the markets slid. What does this tell us about the global investor sentiments, and how exposed are Western economies to sustained Middle East instability?
Economies are already in shambles. They are not. We have also seen China stopping the export of rare earth to the German car manufacturing has seriously affected their production. So it has done to the Indian production. So world markets are already under a serious threat from for various reasons. We have also seen that for during the last 2 weeks, oil prices have gone up by $10 a barrel, WTI. So that is a very clear indication where things are heading. And let's not forget that this is not an ordinary conflict. It's taking place in the heart of the oil-producing nations. For a short term, the Gulf countries, along with the OPEC plus, they may benefit from the higher oil prices, but the investment in these countries, in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, these places, that will be seriously affected because in such a volatile region, nobody will be happy to invest. So that is very much on the cards already. And as for the American factor, Americans are in a serious situation at the moment because we have reports that they are pulling their fleet out from the South China Sea and sending it to the Gulf. That can have very serious consequences because if they leave that post alone, you never know what is going to happen there with Taiwan. So we will have to watch and see that how it all unfolds in the days to come in the way things are developing, because many countries are involved. China is taking the major oil supply for its industry from Iran. Can China afford to let Iran fall? That is a very important question here. And if they cannot allow to let it happen, then let's not also forget Gwadar and Chabahar port are only 72 nautical miles away from each other. Can we afford to let it happen? Can we afford to let Iran fall? So as the situation escalates further, as we move forward into this situation, things will become very clear, and maybe we will have to start thinking in a very different way from how we are thinking today. Maybe there are in some people's imagination that we have been a Western and an American ally traditionally, and we need to maintain that balancing thing between China and the United States, because we will have, we already have a very clear division among the nations, as we can see today, who is standing on which side. So we will have to take a very clear side in the days to come. We cannot afford to have this balancing factor forever. So this is a very important thing, and this will have economic effects on us as well, because if we take the Chinese side, we should be ready that the Americans and the world donor agencies on which our economy has been depending for a long time and still does, IMF and the World Bank and other donors and the Gulf nations which are under the US umbrella. So are we prepared for it? Because on one hand, we have our economic...
Are we prepared for it? But Dr. Hassan, at the same time, Pakistan has to create a balance when it comes to diplomatic ties with different allies and different countries. But I want to take of course, there are some areas where global markets are sliding, but at the same time, US defense contractors saw rising price shares, while major oil are also seeing gains when we talk about US. Are we seeing a shift towards so-called war economy sectors, in your opinion?
You're asking me? Well, yes, that the war economy is perhaps the US priority at the moment, but there is a huge risk. If the reports of F-35 being hit by the air defenses of Iran, if they prove to be correct, what happens to the US arms market if they move their naval ships to the Gulf and anything happens to those ships, to those fleets, which is not beyond the realm of possibility that those ships can be hit. The kind of missile technology Iran has, that will be the end of the game. Is the United States ready to take that kind of risk vis-a-vis its power, military power, arms export, and all that? Who will buy U.S. weapons after that? If the reports prove to be correct that the F-35 have been hit, four of them have been hit, as the Iranian forces are claiming. So this is a big risk game which the US is playing. That is perhaps why they are pushing for a negotiation. But again, I will repeat myself, can United States be trusted by Iran? Because once they are feeling betrayed, they were at the negotiating table. Americans were in possession of the knowledge that they are going to be attacked, and they did not share that information with the Iranians. If I were in their shoes, I wouldn't sit with the Americans for the next time. I would want another party at the negotiating table, not the Americans alone.
Right, of course. And President Donald Trump also asked for and suggested Russia's Putin for mediation as well. But since we are talking about the strategic and political dimensions, Faraz, we know that Iran is walking a strategic tightrope. While considering the closure of Strait of Hormuz, it also risks blocking its own key exports to China. Although you earlier mentioned that it would not be possible for Iran to consider it at this point in time, but if the war prolongs for the longer period of time, it might be a consideration. How do you think, how does this geopolitical dynamic is going to be shaping Iran's strategic calculus, and could China act as a pressure moderating factor?
Well, judging from the Iranian history, if we are to compare the Iranian survival with that of Iranian economic benefits, I think considering the nationalism that is present in Iran, Iran would definitely choose the first one. When it comes to its survival, its nationalism, the economic aspects or other economic dividends would take the secondary stage. So when it is upon its survival, I think Iran would not consider the amount of exports to China. Already Iran has been put under a lot of sanctions. By some estimates, it is the most sanctioned country, and after the Ukraine war, it has become the second most sanctioned country. Amounting to a total of approximately 15,000 different type of sanctions. So they are used to it, and they have over the years developed their strategy by considering the sanction element into the calculus. So I think that if the need arises, Iran would not hesitate in blocking the state of Hormuz, even if it costs themselves as well. So I think that the Chinese factor or Iranian exports to China, I think that would take the secondary stage. Regarding the second part of your question about the role of China, so far we have seen that China is playing a sort of sort of a role of a mediator, a quasi mediator, in which it has supported Iran diplomatically and politically, but at the same time, it is urging the parties to de-escalate the situation. But the problem is that from the Eastern perspective, Chinese and Russians, they are trying to de-escalate the situation. Also, the regional countries, for example, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, they are also trying to de-escalate the situation. But the problem is the sitting government of Israel, led by Netanyahu. Uh, if he wants to de-escalate the situation, it means that it would be the political, it would be the end of his political career, because so far he has not achieved his objectives in the Gaza war. He has failed to dismantle Hamas. He has failed to dismantle Hezbollah. Yes, weakening is
Right.
one thing, but completely dismantle it is not on the card. So I think that if he also fails to fails to achieve his objectives in Iranian theater, so I think that it would mean that he would be basically signing his own resignation letter from the Israeli
Of course,
politics.
that would be political assassination for himself. But at the same time, Faraz, I want your take on what role do you see for OPEC plus alliance in this crisis? Could nations like Saudi Arabia and UAE intervene diplomatically or adjust their own production to stabilize oil markets if the conflict prolongs?
Well, I think the Gulf states are on the receiving end, because any sort of instability in the Middle East would ultimately impact the oil exports of the Gulf countries, and Gulf countries, as we know, are dependent upon their oil imports. So it is a nightmare scenario for them. But frankly speaking, they cannot do much. On the one hand, if they are to talk to Iran, Iran would definitely answer that we would definitely retaliate in response to the Israeli aggression. And if they want to talk to the Israeli or the US counterparts, I think the US is already trying its best to rain down Israel. But I think that the personal connection between Trump and Netanyahu is such that both of them are now eyeing to somehow militarily quash Iran, because they have seen that the negotiations have failed, technically speaking, because Iran is not ready to accept the negotiations on the conditions of the Western parts, specifically the US. Iran is not agree to suspend its uranium enrichment. It is not agreed to dismantle its nuclear program altogether.
Mr. Shami, in the light of potential global economic slowdown, if this conflict prolongs, what are going to be impacts on economies like Pakistan, and especially let's talk about Pakistan's economy, which is energy sensitive, how it is going to be suffering due to weaker demands and rising shipping costs like you earlier mentioned as well?
I have touched some of these points also, like this shipping cost has gone up. So export, import, our definitely foreign trade will affect by this, and by this our balance of payment.
And what should be Pakistan's strategy at this point in time? Because Prime Minister has already made a committee on.
Are you talking about the economic strategy?
Yeah,
economic strategy. I think we have to reduce the oil consumption here. We have to, appeal to the people, because almost 80% of our oil which is imported is used in the transportation sector. So if it is reduced to some extent, I think 10% or 20% we can reduce it. So we can, I think, substantial decrease in our oil bill. So I think this can be done, and then we have to be more efficient. We have to see other avenues like IT businesses with us. So trying to accelerate this. Then the local production has to be seen. Almost about 50% of our industries, is not performing according to its capacity. It's so this is why I think we touch those, because these things, that the global strategical issues like Iran, Iraq, when so long this war will continue or not, this is not in the hand of Pakistan. So we cannot, we are not a big player in to stop it, like General Saab told about that. President Trump obviously is the biggest power in the world, so he can intervene. And I hope that the war will, it's my personal view that by the end of this week, we will see some positive news study. But this is my personal opinion.
Right.
But
in worst case scenario, if this war prolongs and there is a full-fledged war, General Zahid, involving the proxies within Syria and Iraq, how could this change the global energy map, because we are talking the economic implications, economic impacts, and what needs to be done for supply diversification and diplomatically by Islamic countries, by OIC, like we have seen statement from foreign ministers of several Muslim nations as well. What needs to be done?
Maryam, my apologies to say this, that I think convincing both warring factions is a little easy than putting some energy into the OIC and extracting some policy from them. My apologies for this, but this is the reality. This is the real politics. Unfortunately, this is very, very unfortunate. Every country is pursuing their own interests, and they are not foreseeing this war going beyond the borders where it is now. This will, because this is the expansionist policy, we need to understand the application. Even, you know, there are two schools of thought. There are two, serious groups inside Washington administration. One are the conservatives who they want to support Israel to pursue their, ideological hate-based objectives. And then there is, we have already heard about the term forever wars. So they're not in favor of forever wars in the Trump administration. So they want little solution to these problems. But we have already talked about the military complex or the war economy. We have already spoken. So there are big powers who are affiliated and associated, and you know, they are very much attached to their war economies. Even in the non-state elements application, this economy is playing a very important role. Look at this situation and condition in Afghanistan. $7 billion weapon ammunition is lying there. Then this illegal spectrum economy, which is related to illegal spectrum, it is having a kind of a connection with this war. So this is a very, very complex situation, and if this war is prolonged, even with the application of the non-state actors, are the, you know, they are not, as already pointed out in the program, that they have not been completely eliminated. So once because Israel has created a kind of a situation that they have created a lot of enemies around them. There is a huge percentage of, you know, Shia factions in different countries, and now they are targeting and speaking irresponsibly about the killing of the supreme leader. So these things are going deep into the blood. This enmity is not that these are two warring countries that after World War you see those who were serious enemies, they were kind of having affiliation and kind of, helping each other, getting out of that. But this is going to stay for a very, very long period. So this has to be seen. And then if this remains there, and this remains deep rooted, what measures they will take, what options they will have? Nothing but use of the non-state actors. So the control of the war has to be with
and then there would be, it would be spiraling into something that would nobody would be able to control.
Then they will adopt this hitting the tankers, you know, disrupting the supplies, a lot of things which are happening in African, you know, countries and all that. So this will even the big powers who have the real military with them, they're also, you know, now using the non-state actors. Look at the policies of India. So this terrorism has become the the lead instrument of their military application, and pursuing the political, not political, but their own ideological, that RSS mentality pursuits. So this is a serious situation. That's why this mechanism of conflict resolution. Yes, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia is playing a very good role. It must be appreciated. Pakistan can still play a role to create this kind of a, some understanding between the Islamic countries, and we have to make them understand that this fire will come to them one day or the other. So this is not a this is the ideological application.
Right.
This is something beyond normal war or friction or economic application. This is little beyond that, and it is a declared policy. Very, very unserious remarks are coming from Netanyahu. Killing of the individuals, talking about the, and that heuristic approach to the war is always dangerous. And you never, you never sign out the application of the poor people. Poor countries are the weaker. They have other means also, which they will certainly going to adopt.
Of course, that remains an important factor. But as we are coming to the conclusion of the program, Dr. Hassan, I want your take on, of course, global economic implications and its impact on Pakistan. We know that Finance Minister recently held a high-level committee meeting in Islamabad, and he said that Pakistan currently holds adequate petroleum stockpiles, but also called for continued vigilance. In practical terms, how long can these reserves cushion Pakistan against a prolonged price shock or supply disruption?
I don't know, maybe it's 20 days reserves that we have, but we should prepare for the worst case scenario, because look, when we say prolonged war, what do we have in mind? 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 months? What do we mean by a prolonged war? A year, 2 years? What do we mean by that? Let's talk about 4 weeks of this war. The oil prices go up, economies are disrupted, ours is already in shambles, not getting any better. So where do we stand? We should prepare for the worst case scenario. We should do the longer awaited things. We should need to cut down on our expenditure drastically, take those drastic fundamental measures that are long awaited. And because we cannot afford all these spendings, many things, we have a list of them. We have been talking about those things with you in your programs when we discuss economy primarily. But here is the thing. What do we mean by a prolonged war? My idea is that this war is not stopping now. Why is that? Because on whose terms it will stop and what will be those terms? Israel has been hit for the first time in decades inside their cities. Can they stop this war now without, in their words, finishing the job? Finishing the job, why they started it? Ending Iran's nuclear program, that hasn't happened. So what was all this? It was much ado about nothing. Nothing happened. And as for the Middle Eastern countries, the OIC, General Saab rightly said that it really doesn't mean much. We already have the idea, but at the end of this war, we will have a very clear picture who was running with the hare and hunting with the hounds. That will come to everybody's knowledge. We will know that. But for us, it's important that we do serious calculations. How this war is going to affect us geopolitically, economically. Serious matters, it should not be politicized. There should be a national consensus on what we are going to do, where we are standing, what is our economic condition, what drastic, immediate measures need to be taken on war footing. That should be the primary concern of any meeting that is taking place in Islamabad.
Right.
Otherwise,
last comment on, of course, this war and this conflict is being termed as a bad shock for the global economy at a bad time, with, of course, US tariffs already grappling the world's economies, inflation. Do you think this is going to be the tipping point for recession, global recession?
The world economy is already in recession. What do you call, what else is recession? Because the economy is not getting any better. There is a serious economic stress everywhere in the world, because the Western economies, the G7 is not even comparable to what the Chinese economy is. So G7 is just a matter of the past, a nostalgia. And look what happened in G7. They could not even come up with a unanimous statement on Israel-Iran conflict. Japan is standing outside of the G7 stance on Israel. So there is a clear divide between the West and the global South, and only one nation is the odd one out in the global South, that is India. They are clinging on to a declining power. Let's see how long will that last.
Right, right. Thank you very much, Dr. Hassan Zafar, for your valuable input. Thank you very much, Mr. Faraz Naqvi, for joining us in today's program and for your valuable input. Thank you very much, Mr. Humayun Iqbal Shami, for joining us in today's discussion. Thank you very much, Major General retired Zahid Mehmood, for joining us in today's program and for your valuable input. That's all from Game Changer tonight. Take care. Allah Hafiz.